They didn't even act like they cared. No. Hey, one of our crew is left back on the planet.
Whoops.
Welcome back to the Sundowners Club. I'm Sean, your host, and we are going to be covering Andor Episode 6 today. And before we get started, if you like what you see and you hear today, leave a comment below, hit the like button, and most importantly, hit subscribe, because that's how we're going to grow the channel. Without further ado, man to my right, Mr. Sterling, what's up, buddy?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we are 6 episodes into another Star Wars series, Andor. And I know you and I have not spoken about this yet, so this is the first episode recap that we're doing. So we're probably going to be talking in broad strokes, in addition to what we've just seen with the actual heist on the planet Aldhani,
Right.
and stealing the payroll for the Empire. But real quick, just I know we've been inundated. You and I have grown up with Star Wars, where we were part of the generation that people of the original trilogy and then the prequel trilogy, where you had to wait for 3 years before movies came out. So there was this anticipation. You weren't overloaded with content unless you read books to tide you over between movies and games. But it seems now that we've gotten what we've asked for, what some people have asked for, with huge amounts of content, that the question is, do we need it? And I find myself asking that when I watch Andor, because I loved Rogue One, but this it seems like after, and I do think this was the best episode, by the way. I think before we get into it, episode 6 was the best episode, but man, it's slow. I think the cinematography is amazing. I really enjoyed some of the actors. I think the casting has been good, but I think if you can tell a story in 3 episodes instead of 6, why tell it in 6? Shorten it up. Get in the editing room, tighten it up, and get characters from point A to point B in a more efficient manner of time. And this one just seems slow. I mean, am I off on that? How do you feel about it after watching the first 6 episodes?
No, I agree. I think you're trying to make Star Wars without Jedis and lightsabers, and it's hard to do that. The Mandalorian had success with that, but some of the best moments of that show are when it ties in to characters that we already know. And we grew up liking Star Wars, so we wanted to watch it, but I can't say I'm that excited about what's coming. It feels
For the rest of the season of Andor, or just in general?
I think in general, honestly, I've been so disappointed in the last few Star Wars shows. I mean, Obi-Wan I was really looking forward to, and it had some great moments, but overall I didn't think it was a very good show.
I knew Obi-Wan was in trouble, earlier, but I definitely knew Obi-Wan was going to be a real problem. And going back and watching it after the season was over, or the limited series was over, when they were recreating scenes over and over again that were doing the same thing. For example, he's on a ship and he's going to face Vader. He's going to leave to protect Leia and the crew on the ship, the rebels. And he told 5 different individuals, 5 different moments, and 5 different scenes goodbye. He was leaving.
All right.
I thought, well, what are we doing here? And just, I know you and I have talked about just scenes where a little cringeworthy, where the Princess Leia is running through the woods and these characters are tripping over themselves. They can't catch her.
You can't catch a 10-year-old girl. Yeah.
Now, Andor hasn't had that. Andor is, one thing I appreciate about Andor is that 6 episodes in, as slow as it's been, which means you're going to lose viewers. You're going to lose eyeballs.
It's not embarrassing to watch.
They take it seriously, and they respect your intellect as a viewer, in that they're telling a story. They're not necessarily worried about being put into what I call the Star Wars box, so to speak. I respect that. I was interested in that from the first episode. I do think that I want to see more of Luthen. I think the antique shop that he runs on Coruscant is really cool. We saw that at the very end of this episode, but some of the characters, they've spent too much time on supposition that I don't think is taking us anywhere. And we start this episode, we know they're going to pull off the heist on Aldhani, and we've got this Aurora Borealis going on in the skies. It's going to be this big
Which
event.
looked great, by the way.
It
I
was
thought,
it was amazing. Like I was trying to think, when is the last time I saw something in Star Wars where a film or series that I just thought visually made me feel like that. Like, man, that what an amazing shot. That was an amazing scene showing, especially when they're towards the end when they're trying to get through it. But they're going into the facility, and again, they're in uniform. We've got Andor, having conversations with characters. I think he's talking to Karras, and Karras is making the young kid is making the assumptions about what the Empire thinks of, about what they're going to do, and Andor shows that hardness of, you're only half right. They don't care about you, don't care anything about you. So, or what you do. So, but we have these scenes where I think, are they necessary? Are they moving the plot forward? And there's more of that in this episode. But then we get inside the facility, and I really liked Skeen. I thought Skeen. I think his action with playing opposite of Diego Luna, Cassian, was really good in this episode. Again, a little confused. It seemed like they didn't face much opposition. They made a big deal about how we're going to get out of here.
mm-hmm.
How many Imperial officers did we see? They're all just kind of
watching the show.
It didn't seem like that big of a heist. I mean,
Right.
It seemed like a big heist in terms of what they were stealing,
Right.
but in terms of the opposition they faced, there was no suspense. You had the Imperial officer with the wife and son, and I didn't care. I just didn't care. So there are things I liked about it. I think that when they eventually make it through, I was confused. You had the girl that Cinta that was left back on Aldhani, or someone going back to get her. She was part of the crew.
Right.
I was confused by that. You knew Vel was close with her. They didn't even act like they cared. Nobody. I don't think anybody mentioned it. Hey, one of our crew is left back on the planet.
Whoops. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there was a scene that I missed, or something was left out on the editing floor, which seems like so far the first 6 episodes they haven't left much on the editing floor. But a little confused by that, and the every series, everything you watch has a rhythm to it, and this one seems a little disjointed. But again, we get to the end where we see the character of Karras has been wounded, or actually on the ship. The payroll has crushed him, and you're not sure if he's dying, but he needs help. And I thought that was a cool scene. You see Andor's humanity. Hey, we're going to get a doctor. Val didn't want to go get a doctor, and so you see them go to this off planet, and the doctor with 4 arms is operating on Karras, and but can't save him. And then you see this scene. I'm almost sad to see Skeen go, because you see this scene where he's turning into, he shows he's a rogue, right? He says, "Oh, I didn't have a brother. I made that up. And let's split the loot. Or you're not fighting for anything. I'm not fighting for it. We're just wanting to take a step up the ladder for ourselves,
Right.
to make it out of this, And so, I think what Skeen has misjudged is Andor's past with his sister. One of the things I did like that they did was setting the stage of who he was as a child. And so Andor doesn't hesitate. He murders him in cold blood, which ties into what we saw at the beginning of Rogue One when he kills someone. When he's threatened at all, he will not hesitate to kill. I enjoy that part of it, because that's not a character we normally see in anything Star Wars. But then
usually they're just villains. But
yeah, it's a ragtag group of individuals that have their own agendas, and then of course we don't know Luthen's ultimate agenda. We know Luthen is potentially trying to build a rebellion and work with Mon Mothma, but I don't think we've seen all the layers, what Luthen's backstory, motivations are. I'm hoping we get more into that, because I enjoy that. And then we cut to Coruscant, and now the word is getting out that there's been a heist on Aldhani, and Mon Mothma is speaking in the Galactic Senate. Half the people, just like in our country, aren't showing up for votes, so they're all enjoying vacations. and not representing their constituents. So, it's good to see that in Empire, the politicians are doing the same thing. But Mon Mothma speaking, and then it comes across the wire that you've had a heist on Aldhani and everybody's rushing out. And so one of the things that we saw a glimpse of was Dedra, the Imperial officer, the blonde-haired officer. I really want to see more of her character. I don't know yet if I'm all in on seeing more of Cyril. I know we're going to see more of Cyril, but Dedra being brought in, she was the first one that was making this linkage of there's something going on across all these systems, and nobody's listening to her, right? And so now she's there, and we now know that we have what is the beginnings of a potential rebellion. And so the end of the episode, did that make you more excited to see? We've got 6 more episodes of this season, of a 2-season show, by the way. They did announce this show is only going to be 2 seasons. So the fact that they're probably going to do 24 episodes, I don't have a problem with that, because if you're going to do an 8-episode season, you're looking at basically 3 seasons worth, right? So are you looking forward to it? I mean, we know who's coming. We know Saw Gerrera.
Right.
Forrest Whitaker is going to show up.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm not too excited. I'm still going to watch it because that's the plan. But and I want to give it a chance. And I think we're 6 episodes in, so I've definitely tried. But you talked about we might not see Cyril again. What's the point of that character?
I think that Cyril, has the hologram of Andor.
All right.
And I don't know if Cyril's going to have a story arc where he becomes good, which if he changes sides, if he becomes someone working, more on Coruscant.
They don't have a main villain yet, that I can see.
Right. And so I think that we don't know what's going to happen with Cyril yet, and we don't know his role. I believe he's going to somehow be tied into Dedra on the Imperial side, Imperial security, and lead the charge, because he has that hologram of Andor, and they're going to tie this heist back to Andor. Andor thinks he's gotten away. He's going to take his money. He's going to go somewhere else and distance himself. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Cyril's role is going to be somehow tied into Andor being drawn to this. But will Cyril turn? I don't know. What could be done? What could you see the remaining 6 episodes that would not necessarily make you feel better about where Star Wars is going as a brand, as an IP, but for this particular show? What could you see that would make you say, I'm excited for season 2, or I'm going to watch season 2?
It's such a cheap trick, but you want to see some of those classic characters.
Palpatine?
Well, not Palpatine, maybe, but like Vader. Wouldn't that be cool if he came in and stopped the heist or something like that? I don't know. That's a cheap trick, but I would like to see more stuff with characters that we know, as opposed to just characters I don't really care about. And there's not anyone on this show that I'm that interested in. He was in Rogue One, and he was a decent character, but he's not. I just don't know if it's worth having a show about him.
There are a lot of characters they could bring in. When you involve the expanded universe, and we did see that in the antique shop. We saw in Luthen's antique store, shop, whatever you want to call it, gallery, that there were tie-ins to characters from the expanded universe. And there are a lot of ways they could bring in characters that I think would excite people. I don't know. I like Forrest Whitaker. I like Saw Gerrera. The character in the animated shows and the character in Rogue One, and I like that. But for someone who is on the fence about sticking with this show, what's going to make them tune in? There's a lot of characters that they could bring in that could potentially do that.
That fit in that timeline. Right?
That's right. So, there's a lot of ways they could go. So you think they need to really get creative? They need to bring in some established characters.
Well, yeah, because if it leads to Rogue One, we've seen Rogue One. We know what happens. We know how his story ends. So you got to do something where it leads into something else. Like what other characters does this affect? Where else can you go with it? I think there's just not a whole lot they can do.
Well, look, I don't
And
know that we'll see it. I don't think we will, but we could see something like Thrawn. I think Thrawn's going to show up in
that'd
the
be cool.
Thrawn. I think they're saving Thrawn for the Ahsoka series. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I think they're saving that. They're saving Ezra and Thrawn, that whole storyline for Ahsoka, and rightfully so. But that's just an example of somebody they could bring in.
This takes place way before the Ahsoka series, though, doesn't it?
This takes place. Yeah, well, Ahsoka was in the Clone Wars, and so
Right. This is between 3 and 4.
right. But you remember, you also had Star Wars Rebels,
Right.
and the ship and Ezra's, the ghost was I think was spotted in the assault, in Rogue One, at the end of the movie. So there's some tie-ins. Again, I think that you're right. They need to do something. They need to do something to get people pumped up for season 2. There's got to be a payoff. Right now, I'm on the fence. I think it's okay. I think that if I was looking at these shows, obviously Mandalorian is off the charts great. I trust Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau with anything they put their hands on. As a fan, I'm all in. It's like seeing something with, an actor that that is trusted. You're going to go see that content. Denzel Washington, Harrison Ford. I'm going to go see anything that they're in just because I trust them.
Right.
But when you get beyond Mandalorian, and I am excited about Ahsoka, some of the other shows I felt like were misses. Things I liked, things I didn't like at all. And the question is less more? And I think with Andor, I was really excited for this show, but I'm on the fence. I want to see the next 6 episodes where it goes. I'm the type of fan that will stick with them. I'm not hard to please. I mean, but you've got to give me good content. You've got to tell a story that is compelling and don't take the fan base for granted. And so I do think they've made some good choices, but I also think that they could have condensed the story a little bit. And I think they know it because initially they were talking about more seasons than 2. And they used the excuse in an interview. I think Tony Gilroy and Diego talked about there's too much that goes into these shows, that they were too ambitious, so now they're going to condense it into 2 seasons. I think they know that there's not enough story here. So you've got a limited series would have probably served this one well. But so we've got the heist. We know Andor is thinking he's gotten away. We know he's not. We know that now the Imperial security is alerted, and they're locked in. Right? They said you're not going home tonight. So we're in this to figure out what happened. And so I think it's just the beginning of trying to find out who was behind this. So I think the cat and mouse with Luthen and Mon Mothma is going to only grow. I'm interested in seeing that, but again, I'm on the fence, and so we're going to cover it and do our best to talk about the things we like, but also be honest and say the things that we don't like. And I think in a time with all the streaming devices and content at our fingertips, when you see shows that we really are hitting it out of the park that we enjoy, and we see something that is a little disjointed, we're going to say it.
Yeah.
So
it's not criticizing anybody who does like it. I mean, if you like it, that's great. It's just, I just think it's kind of boring for now.
So they've got to step it up. So that's it for us. I know we kind of beat a dead horse there, but we look forward to seeing a little bit more of Andor and see if they can finish the second half of the season and get more people interested. And we'll see what happens. TCB.